It's tomato time, where I am anyway. And my plants have reached the point where they're getting too big to not have supports. I've found myself in a position of not knowing what to use for supports. Any beginner gardener has encountered these at some point. I don't use these for tomatoes because they become a tangly mess and inevitably outgrow this size. If you have these, don't get rid of them. I still use them to prop up. I don't use them in the ground because these rust out really bad, so I just fold it in and just set it over to just contain a spot, to keep it upright and to keep my dog from charging through it. So they're not useless, and they're good for beans or like cucumbers. But in an effort to stop using these, I've experimented a little with alternative cage styles or trellis systems, and I have a few that I'm really happy with, so I'm going to demonstrate those today. These are not store-bought. I did not purchase a product intended to be tomato growth management system. I just made something, and I would recommend you do that as well if you can, because it is so much cheaper. When I went to the store just to get ideas, I saw a single tomato cage going for around $20. And if you just have the one, that doesn't seem like a big investment for something you can use over and over. But I have like 10 plus tomato plants, and that's just not, I'm not going to be able to spend that. So I made a few things, and I'm going to run through them. The first system, this is not an original idea. I didn't invent any of these. Maybe the design is like of my own brain, but the concept's been around forever. This one is called a floor to weave. I used 2 cedar poles that cost $2 each, and I am currently supporting 4 plants, soon to be 5. If I had another one here that could reach, it would be 5. And so for $4, this is definitely the most cost-effective multi-plant system. It does take up a lot of space visually, but I like it as a barrier here from the patio to the garden. Having sort of a transparent screen is cozy. Some of these are planted in this bed and some of them planted directly in the ground, so I can utilize 2 growing zones with one structure. Okay, that was pretty quick. But if you're going to do a lot of tomatoes, you can adjust this to fit whatever capacity you need. I just did 2, but in retrospect, maybe I would put 1 more pole, just because these do kind of sag a little. I one and done on this. If I were to do it again next year, I have some recommendations that I would do differently, and that is attaching a screw here to secure all of the twine instead of running it in one continuous thread, because it does lose its support over time, which is still okay. Like, it's gentle on the plants, which I like. I did snap one. I just taped it, but it's been enough support for these. These are small tomatoes. Most of these are little pears. I do have one that's like a midder size tomato, middly, and not so much of an issue. And I can still prune them if it feels like it's starting to, well, it's not the sturdiest. So I would make it sturdier next time. I'm going to roll with it for now. A piece at the top was another design I had. So if I use 3 pieces, I could have 1 across the top and then lower the twine down and do a spiral. And so I took that idea. I had it after I'd already made this one, so I adjusted it to my next system. Is my head in the shot? I call this the tomato triplex. And I didn't have any plans for this. I just threw some more of these cedar poles, $2 each. I used 3 because each piece was able to be used for the top piece. So I cut them to height, adjusted the angle to accommodate my space, and then used the leftover pieces to secure the top. And I have enough room for 3 plants here in one space. Could probably do more if I did a square shape. I could have 4. But I only had 3 here that would fit the way I planted them in a triangle formation. And I think this looks pretty nice. I have that same concept with the string dangling from the top and then just wrapping it around each plant as it grows up. So if this were to get taller, if I, in theory, could raise this whole thing, and I like that, the ability to grow into it, or I could start shorter. I thought about making like a telescoping version out of PVC, but I'm trying to get away from PVC in the garden. I don't like the way it looks. I have some structures that are what I have because I started on a budget and that's what I've got, and they last forever. But I want something a little more natural looking, so I really enjoyed these cedar pieces and the twine. It blends into my space better. Just fits in a way that the PVC did not. This one is my favorite. If I were to replicate this again, I would do it the same way, I think. Other than maybe making a 4-sided one. But for $6, 3 tomato plants versus $30 if I use the store-bought. Definitely my favorite alternative. For a single plant, my simplest stake is literally just a dead stick hammered into the ground. So I just prune it to mostly a single stem. This one I've actually allowed other stems to grow, and I'm trying to do like a low stress training on them to have them root all those extra, what are those called? Suckers. So all the suckers I have just laid down into the soil, and hopefully they will root on their own and I can cut them off and have separate plants. We'll see. Or I'll just let them keep growing because I have a lot of space here and I'm just experimenting. So all of these extra suckers I've allowed, but the single stem is wrapping its way toward the top. So this is absolutely the cheapest. This one was free. I used a little bit of twine, so not zero investment, but for the pole, you could use any kind of, like if I used one of those cedar stakes, I think it would work just as well. But I do like this. I barely see it. I like hardly notice that it's there. So I like it for that. For a single stem branching upward, this is a simple and effective solution. And that's what I've been using until this year, where I've invested in the cedar stakes. So that gives me 1, 2, 3, 4. What's one more? What's another option? So this is what happens if you allow your tomato to outgrow a cage. Obviously this is not a tomato cage. This is just a hanging basket that I use to keep bunnies and dog out of my plants when they're young. But I let this one go too long. So I'll just demonstrate how difficult, I broke one already, how difficult it is to weave these tough tomato branches out of tiny little slots. You have to go at the same time because any resistance. And if I can do this without breaking it, that's awesome. I'm not going for more than that. Okay, not the worst. With the tomato cages I've used in the past, I've just cut them just to get things out without mangling my plants too much. But anyway, so to demonstrate just an important part for these trellises that I've described and demonstrated is correct pruning for your tomato to make sure that you are maximizing your potential. So this tomato forks at the base, and technically there's a third one. This is a sucker, so I would just remove this. But you want to prune your tomato to a single stem if they are indeterminate tomatoes. You need to check your variety because some tomatoes just bush out and that's how they grow and they stop growing. So you don't need to worry about maximum height for those types of plants. But for indeterminate tomatoes, which is mostly what I'm growing to my knowledge, I want them to be able to grow as tall as possible. And I want there to be as little interference on that main stem, just so there's maximum airflow and more sun getting to the panel leaves. So pruning it is important, and I don't do that for everything. I do like to experiment a little, and so this one has just been sitting here. I haven't done anything with it, but I will let this one go just so I can see, because it has a lot of tomatoes on it and it doesn't seem to be struggling too much. I'm not sure how I'm going to trellis this one. I have another system. Not ideal, but I'll show you now because I'm going to be relocating this raised bed. So every plant in here currently is either doomed or going to be hopefully relocated along with it. So I have a piece of pipe here, just curb fined pipe, and a PVC fitting that I took off of one of my hoop houses, my PVC hoop house. And what I've done last year for these gangly little bush types, just insert it into the ground. And I'll take my twine. What is that? I'll run it through this PVC at the top. Secure this at the bottom. Usually I tie it to a rock. Since I'm not using this as a permanent home, I'm just gonna demonstrate with this. Hold it down with a stump. Now I have these twine pieces are taut enough that I can wrap this through. Because if I were to just tie it like I do for the stick, this is so slick I wouldn't be able to get a good hold on it without choking out the stem of the tomato. So this is a gentler way to train them. And so I would just wrap and keep it upright. And then it can grow kind of funny, and it'll be okay. Like, if it is wide, it's not a big deal to me. If I have two main stems instead of one, and since these have so much healthy growth on them anyway, I'm just gonna roll with it. I mean, hypothetically, this one, I don't know. I'm gonna try to relocate it. It's a good looking plant. I can't remember what variety it is, but I really liked everything that I planted, so I don't want to see it fail. But it's just kind of ugly. I don't have anything against this method. It's just the metal pipe and the plastic fitting. It's just not that cute. It's not the garden charm that I'm going for. So I've strayed from that method. But if you have the stuff, which I did, it works great in a pinch. So clearly not every tomato I planted gets some sort of support. This tomato bridge is doing excellent. Oh, dang it. I pretty much only plant smaller variety tomatoes. I think this one will ripen up. I usually pick them when they're starting to blush and let them ripen. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab these. So that's it for my 5 tomato trellis systems. If you have a different method, let me know. If it's under $3, I would especially like to know, because anyone can go and buy something and have it, but I think utilizing creativity in the face of necessity can yield some really interesting results. And I'm going for character, not so much I got this at the store in my garden personally. So let me know if you've got any creative DIY tomato trellises, and I wish you a happy tomato harvest, and thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. I'd like to see other methods. I am happy with what I've got for the amount that I spent. Should I scratch myself in the video? So that's it